This year's U.S. presidential election is not just another routine political event, it heralds unprecedented significance. With President Joe Biden stepping back and global conflicts intensifying, the nation faces a choice that could shape its future like never before. For the first time in years, the decision we make here will impact not only America's domestic policies, but also the peace, stability, and security of the world at large. From a Stoic perspective, now is the time to carefully evaluate each candidate's true character, considering not just their promises but the core values, ethics, and resilience they bring to this pivotal moment in history. The renowned Robert Greenwood once observed that a leader's true nature is often revealed in how they respond to failure. This is especially apparent in narcissistic leaders who react to criticism with unchecked fury and an insatiable desire for revenge. Their sense of self-righteousness blinds them to accountability. In today's discussion, we explore the perils of narcissistic leadership, a subject the Stoics understood profoundly. Narcissism was as much a force in ancient Rome and Greece as it is today, a recurring influence in politics and human history. The Stoics, many of whom held positions of power like Marcus Aurelius as Emperor of Rome, were acutely aware of this danger and took deliberate steps to avoid embodying or empowering it. Consider a young boy adopted by the Roman emperor and carefully groomed for leadership. Destined to rule a vast empire, he was raised with privilege and insulated from hardship. He was taught by the era's greatest philosophers and shown how the world operated, an education that included Stoic principles. At first glance, one might think this boy was Marcus Aurelius, yet he was not. This boy was Nero, one of Rome's most infamous emperors. Although their lives started with similar circumstances, they diverged dramatically. One became an icon of tyranny, the other a symbol of virtuous leadership. The difference lies not merely on circumstance, but in character. Nero, privileged with Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, as a mentor, arguably had a better foundation than Marcus Aurelius. Yet vanity and a thirst for adulation corrupted him. Obsessed with his own image, Nero longed for Olympic glory, but without the discipline to earn it, he hosted his own games and rigged them in his favor. He dabbled in poetry, but when others outshone him, he banished them. He viewed his role not as one of service, but as a platform for demanding attention, praise, and control. Here we see a powerful lesson. While the Stoics taught that leadership demands self-mastery, narcissistic rulers see only their own grandeur, disregarding the very principles they claim to uphold. He craved attention, an insatiable addiction that left him perpetually wanting more. This unending thirst made him vulnerable to flatterers and easily distracted by sycophants. Epictetus recounts an instance where a man ingratiated himself with Nero's cobbler, hoping to curry favor with the emperor himself. So Nero surrounded himself with a court of dependents, those who told him precisely what he wanted to hear. So this created a false reality, a gilded prison common among tyrants and kings. One story tells of Nero's chariot races, where he arranged for slaves to clap and cheer on cue, manufacturing the adoration he so desperately desired. Even in the face of absurdity, he demanded validation, reveling in the illusion of popularity. His insecurities led to acts of profound vanity and detachment from reality. After he murdered his wife, he found a male slave who resembled her, dressed him in her likeness, had him castrated, and pretended he was still with his spouse, a testament to his delusional need for control over his narrative. This is what philosophers call the dictator's trap. When a leader is both feared and emotionally fragile, those around him are compelled to distort reality, feeding his ego and reinforcing his false beliefs. As a result, the leader lives in a bubble, shielded from the truths he must confront. Slaves clap for his chariot races. Sycophants assure him of his poetic genius, and advisors hide unpleasant realities, claiming that battles are victorious, the economy is sound, and that all is well. In truth, a genuine leader confronts reality, unpleasant though it may be, and addresses it. Seneca, however, was not without blame. He wrote speeches to placate the Roman people, presenting Nero as a responsible ruler when in reality he was anything but. In a rational society, Nero's conduct would have marked his downfall. but his isolation allowed the situation to spiral further into madness. Nero's vanity had a dark counterpart, his ego. Convinced of his own superiority, Nero believed he was wiser, more talented, and more beloved than he truly was. Epictetus, who served Nero's secretary, offers a timeless reminder as impossible to learn what you think you already know. Perhaps he was referring to Nero, whose arrogance rendered him impervious to wisdom. Though Seneca imparted philosophical wisdom to him, Nero dismissed it, assuming it applied to others, never to himself. In the famous statue by Eduardo Barón González, Seneca stands with a scroll, perhaps one of his philosophical works, while Nero, sullen and cloaked, turns away, disinterested in the very lessons he once valued. The early years of Nero's reign showed promise. He listened, and there were mature voices around him. But as his vanity and ego deepened, those voices fell silent, and he descended into the unchecked spiral that marked his ruin. As Nero aged and stopped listening, the wheels began to come off, as they inevitably do for narcissistic leaders. The esteemed biographer Robert Caro offers a profound insight here. Power does not corrupt, it reveals. In Nero's case, we see not a man corrupted by power, but one whose true nature emerges as he sheds the influence of those who might temper him. As he dismisses advisors, eliminates his mother, and silences anyone capable of guiding him, the real Nero emerges a delusional, vain, and egotistical figure, tragically unfit to wield the power he holds. Power unveils a critical truth about individuals like Nero, whose grandiose veneer hides deep insecurities and paranoia. Nero likely sensed he was hopelessly outmatched, uncertain of his own legitimacy. Surrounded by the spoils of power and the perceived envy of others, he grew convinced that he was constantly under threat. One by one, he eliminated those he saw as rivals, even assassinating his mother, unable to tolerate her influence. At one point, he interpreted a comet as a sign of conspiracy against him, resulting in the death of a distant cousin. Seneca, still his mentor, had to remind him of a stoic truth that death is inevitable, and that attempting to eliminate every possible successor is a futile exercise. But Nero, consumed by fear, continued, leaving a trail of destruction and paranoia. In a moment of crisis, the great fire of Rome, Nero's flaws were laid bare. While likely not responsible for starting the fire, he showed the hallmarks of an unprepared leader. He failed to organize an effective response to the disaster, then used the tragedy as a pretext to indulge in grandiose architectural projects. Worse still, rather than uniting his people, he blamed the Christians, initiating a persecution that would echo for centuries. It was, as Robert Greenwood said, during this crisis that Nero's character revealed itself, entirely a fragile, fearful man cloaked in the trappings of authority. A group of Stoics, later known as the Stoic opposition, found Nero's reign abhorrent, while Seneca fancied himself the adult in the room, moderating Nero's worst impulses. Other Stoics, phrases like Gaius, Plautus, Thrasea, and Helvidius, refused to comply. They stood in defiance, embodying a true resistance to tyranny, honoring principles of virtue over complicity in Nero's debased rule. Through their example, we glimpse the Stoic resolve to live in alignment with virtue, even as Nero's power revealed him as the very opposite, a ruler consumed by ego, trapped in his own fears. Nero simply cannot tolerate anyone who fails to validate his actions. He is incensed by even the slightest hint of dissent or challenge. This obsession with unyielding approval leads him into perpetual conflict. He despises Agrippinus, a Stoic with a deeply ingrained aversion to emperors who refuses to attend Nero's gatherings. To Nero, admiration and celebration are not privileges he must earn, but entitlements he believes he inherently deserves. Helvidius, another Stoic, faces banishment for merely speaking favorably about Brutus, Caesar's assassin. Nero interprets this as a veiled threat, his paranoia spinning him further out of control. Nero is, at his core, unfit for leadership. He lacks both competence and seriousness, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake as he eliminates anyone who dares to oppose him. In one darkly ironic moment, a condemned conspirator staring into the grave prepared for him remarks, "Even this is not up to code," a reflection of the pervasive dysfunction under Nero's rule. Nero's most formidable adversary is Thrasea, a Stoic whose commitment to truth and justice stands in stark contrast to Nero's delusions. Thrasea's refusal to participate in Nero's excesses or honor his whims as a silent yet powerful opposition. When corruption arose, Thrasea called it out. When something was amiss, he named it as such. This moral integrity naturally brought him into conflict with a regime that thrived on sycophancy. The emperor's advisors, feeding Nero's paranoia, urged him to eliminate Thrasea, comparing their rivalry to that of Caesar and Cato. But Nero, threatened by even the idea of a virtuous counterpart, seeks Thrasea's demise. In a final confrontation, Nero expects Thrasea to plead for mercy, but Thrasea, ever resolute, replies, "If you believe I am guilty, name the charges or accuse me openly." Ultimately condemned on false charges, Thrasea faces his death with unyielding dignity, stating, "Nero can kill me, but he cannot harm me." By refusing to let Nero's tyranny corrupt him, Thrasea remains untarnished even in the face of death. As with all tyrants, Nero's support erodes first gradually, then all at once. In a final act of betrayal, he orders the death of Seneca, the very man who had raised him as a son. As those around Seneca weep, he calmly reminds them, "Why are you surprised? Who among you did not know of Nero's cruelty?" He reflects that, given all Nero has done to those close to him, his own fate was inevitable. In the end, power did not create Nero's cruelty, it merely revealed it. His true nature was there all along, waiting for the opportunity to manifest unchecked. Nero spiraled into a descent that marked his reign with madness and decay. Eventually, the Stoic opposition applied enough pressure, but even in his final moments, Nero showed his true cowardice. Incapable of facing his fate with dignity, he clung desperately to self-preservation. And when a member of the Praetorian Guard saw Nero's panic, he remarked, "Is it truly so terrible to die?" In the end, even Nero's loyal bodyguards abandoned him, leaving him to face a fate reserved for Rome's most reviled criminals, a death by stoning, his body to be discarded over a cliff. Confronted with this, Nero ultimately chose suicide, but even then he lacked the courage to complete the act himself, requiring assistance for his final exit. His last words, "This is loyalty," were a twisted testament from a man who had never grasped the value of virtue, whose reign was doomed to collapse in violence and disgrace. The Stoics understood well, character is destiny. Nero's flawed character led him, inevitably, to ruin. This tragic arc serves as a cautionary tale that has echoed through history. Narcissistic leaders destabilize and destroy. They tarnish everything they touch, a truth the Stoics emphasized. Yet, as distant as Nero's tale might seem, it's a narrative that continues to unfold in modern times. Consider 2016, when Donald Trump was elected president, and two prominent advisors, General James Mattis and General H.R. McMaster, both students of Stoic thought, found themselves navigating an administration led by a very different kind of leader. Trump, from the beginning, demanded affirmation that often contradicted objective reality. He insisted, for instance, that his inauguration drew unprecedented crowds, an assertion objectively disproven yet fervently echoed by his administration. Research reveals that Trump's approach to the presidential daily briefing, one of the highest intelligence summaries on global matters, was marked by impatience and a desire for brevity. Much like Nero, disinterested in Seneca's insights, Trump reportedly asked for the briefings to be shortened and simplified. Intelligence reports were condensed and tailored to appeal to his ego, with his own name appearing frequently to hold his attention. In both ancient Rome and today, we see a similar trajectory: a leader whose fragile ego demands an altered reality, even at the cost of truth, stability, and integrity. For the Stoics, this serves as a timeless warning. Unchecked vanity and hubris in leadership can steer even the mightiest empires toward chaos. He had little interest in complexities or in anything that seemed bleak or negative. When the COVID-19 pandemic began to spread globally in 2020, Donald Trump pointed fingers at his advisors, claiming they hadn't informed him. Yet they had tried, he simply wasn't receptive. You cannot absorb knowledge when you presume to already possess it. Conceit obstructs wisdom. Trump harbored distrust and resentment toward the intelligence community, largely due to investigations that shadowed his tenure. This aversion to hearing anything that challenged his views led him to miss a profound crisis, a catastrophe whose repercussions would eclipse even Nero's infamous fire. Trump preferred the echo chamber of Twitter and cable news opinion shows where pundits reflected back to him narratives he found agreeable. As McMaster observed, it gradually became clear that Trump sought affirmation rather than truth. He was less inclined toward in-depth analysis, preferring briefings that echoed his own assumptions, enabling his desired actions without questioning. He avoided anything that felt like schoolwork or intellectual rigor, dismissing knowledgeable individuals with derision, often with a sarcastic "okay, professor." This aversion reflected an underlying fragility common among narcissistic leaders, an unrelenting need to avoid feeling diminished, thus chasing grandeur, large displays, and public recognition. Such figures become easy prey to flattery and deception. Unlike Cato, who sacrificed his life to uphold the ancient virtues and revered institutions, narcissistic leaders can't fathom placing principles above personal ambition. When Trump reportedly looked upon the graves at Arlington and wondered what was in it for them, it revealed a fundamental incomprehension of self-sacrifice, a notion beyond his grasp. For Trump, self-interest took precedence, overshadowing any concept of shared purpose or higher calling. In him, one finds the pulpit used as a platform for personal vendettas, for lashing out rather than uniting. His self-aggrandizement, comparing himself to Lincoln, labeling himself the greatest, betrays a vanity nearly inconceivable in his scale. This is a character marked by grievance, delighting in the validation from favorable retweets, embodying a bitterness and grandeur akin to Nero's but magnified to an almost surreal extent. All of this leads to one of the most inexcusable statements ever made by a leader, especially an American president. During the height of the pandemic, Trump deflected responsibility in a press conference, a striking contrast to the example set by Truman, who declared, "The buck stops here." But narcissistic leaders, as Robert Greene explains, cannot accept responsibility, for to do so would mean acknowledging their own imperfections. They are fundamentally incapable of admitting faults, apologizing, or recognizing the negative impact of their actions on others. This resistance to self-reflection is precisely why they cannot grow, cannot learn, and are doomed to repeat mistakes. Figures like Mattis and McMaster, much like the Stoic Seneca, eventually found themselves sidelined for refusing to compromise their principles. McMaster, in a candid discussion, simply told Trump, "I'm not your guy." There were ethical lines he would not cross, and as a result he was pushed out. Narcissistic leaders, with their self-imposed filters, inevitably surround themselves only with those who echo their views, ultimately ridding themselves of advisors who could genuinely help. General John Kelly, dismissed as Trump's chief of staff, warned him of the risks. Without boundaries, impeachment was likely. And in the end, Trump did face impeachment, tied in part to his treatment of allies as mere transactional figures. The transactional turned catastrophic as Trump sought to leverage Ukraine for political gain, leading to his first impeachment. After losing the 2020 election, Trump, unable to reconcile with defeat, descended further into delusion, having purged anyone who might counter his narrative. His reaction mirrored that of Catiline, the Roman populist who, like Trump, faced a bitter loss and could not accept it. Just as Catiline sought to overturn an election loss to Cicero, Trump attempted to overturn his own defeat, culminating in the events of January 6th. Fueled by lies, his followers stormed the Capitol, bearing symbols of hate and violently targeting those who stood in their way, chanting "Hang Mike Pence." It was a deeply dark moment in American history. The tragedy of this day is magnified when considering another American president, George Washington, who revered Cato and feared the implications of Catiline's example. In 1783, faced with soldiers disillusioned by unpaid dues and rumors of rebellion, Washington stepped forward, delivering a powerful speech that quashed any conspiracies before they could endanger the fledgling nation. In contrast, on January 6th, Donald Trump not only incited the mob, but watched idly as chaos engulfed the Capitol. The day, drenched in darkness, was a stark testament to the perils of unchecked narcissism in leadership. Like Nero during the Great Fire, where was Donald Trump in those crucial hours on January 6th, when he could have intervened, when his words could have changed the course? Congressman Mike Gallagher, a Marine Corps veteran, spoke of being trapped in his office that day, forced to consider using his Marine Corps sword to protect his staff. He went on live television pleading with Trump, "Mr. President, you must call off this mob. Only you can end this." But Trump remained silent. Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who served on the January 6th commission and listened to hours of testimony detailing the unfolding chaos, teared up as he gazed at the brave Capitol Police. Trump's response: he mocked him as crying Adam, laughing rather than accepting any responsibility for what he had set in motion. Chrysippus, the Stoic, once remarked, "If I wished to join the mob, I would not have become a philosopher." The Stoic aversion to populist frenzy is grounded in a knowledge of its dangers. Once the flames are ignited, they are nearly impossible to quell. Stoic recognized that political violence, a force that ultimately eroded the Roman Republic, is not a sudden event but a gradual crescendo chaos. They knew well that a leader who would incite or direct such violence cannot be entrusted with power. Trump, much like Nero, was enabled by those around him. Seneca, who sought to temper Nero's rule, ultimately found himself implicated. There lies a fragile line between temperance and enabling, a line often blurred by figures like Madison McMaster. Naomi Mitchison, in her novel The Blood of the Martyrs, captures this dilemma in a line spoken by Seneca's brother: "We have spent our lives serving the kind of state no decent man ought to serve, and now we are old enough to see what we've done." Trump, as Nero was, revealed himself woefully unfit for power. In contrast, Marcus Aurelius, chosen and groomed for leadership by Hadrian, walked the same path as Nero, yet emerged with humility rather than narcissism. He consciously chose virtue, writing in Meditations about resisting the allure of power, cautioning himself against being Caesarified, against being tainted by the emperor's purple robe. Marcus understood that to embody philosophy's ideals, one must actively fight against the seductions of power. It is this disciplined commitment to integrity that distinguishes true leadership from mere authority. In another perspective, during his presidency from 2017 to 21, Donald Trump demonstrated elements of Stoic philosophy through specific events. To begin with, in his tax reform and economic stimulus policies, Trump made a decisive move by reducing taxes for businesses and individuals through the tax-based Combs Act of 2017. This action reflects his focus on controlling what he could influence, aligning with the Stoic principle of focusing on what is within one's control. By doing so, Trump aimed not only to boost domestic production but also to create stable job opportunities for Americans. This reflects a commitment to the welfare of the community, as he believed that this policy would contribute to long-term, sustainable economic growth. Next, in the trade war with China, Trump demonstrated courage when facing a significant challenge in reducing the trade deficit and protecting American industries. This was a difficult and risky endeavor, yet he chose to confront one of the U.S.'s largest trade partners, embodying the Stoic spirit of courage in the face of adversity. Furthermore, despite opposition from various sectors, Trump remained steadfast in his principles to protect American trade interests. This shows his readiness to stand firm on values he deemed right, aligning with the Stoic ideal of adherence to principles. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Trump exhibited another aspect of Stoic philosophy: calmness amidst adversity. Confronted with an unprecedented health crisis, he quickly implemented preventative measures, such as restricting travel from China early in 2020. While controversial, this timely decision aimed to mitigate the virus's impact on the U.S. economy and public health. Through his response, He showed accountability in every circumstance, a quality highly regarded in Stoicism, indicating Trump's efforts to manage the crisis within the limits of his authority. Additionally, Trump demonstrated a long-term vision through his policies to revitalize the manufacturing sector and encourage domestic production. He was determined to rebuild American manufacturing to reduce dependency on foreign countries, especially China, enabling the U.S. to become more economically self-sufficient and stable. This approach aligns with the Stoic philosophy of prioritizing long-term benefits, as he focused not on immediate gains but on a sustainable future for the nation. Trump's commitment to overcoming trade barriers and facing higher domestic production costs highlights his courage and determination to ensure a stable future. Finally, in negotiating and signing the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, with Canada and Mexico, Trump demonstrated patience and a spirit of cooperation, key aspects of Stoic philosophy. Replacing NAFTA with USMCA involved numerous challenging negotiations, yet he remained patient and persistent in achieving a fairer agreement for the U.S. His persistence and willingness to collaborate with international partners in finding a mutually beneficial solution reflect not only his focus on U.S. interests, but also his adaptability to secure a harmonious outcome for all three nations. In conclusion, these events illustrate that, despite ongoing controversy, Trump demonstrated several Stoic values, such as steadfastness, courage in the face of challenges, and long-term strategic vision, essential qualities for a national leader. Turning to Kamala Harris, the opposing candidate in the 2024 U.S. presidential election, we can observe that she represents a vision distinct from Donald Trump's. As a member of the Democratic Party, Harris emphasizes policies aimed at advancing social justice, promoting equality, and safeguarding the rights of marginalized groups. Her strengths lie not only in her ability to connect with communities, but also in her consistent alignment with democratic values, which has helped her build a reputation as a compassionate, approachable leader. First and foremost, Harris demonstrates a steadfast commitment to the principles of fairness and social equality. Throughout her career, she has persistently advocated for the rights of the underprivileged, reflecting one of the core Stoic values, responsibility toward the common good. In her roles as California's Attorney General and as a U.S. Senator, Harris has not shied away from controversial issues, championing reforms in criminal justice and healthcare, even when such policies faced opposition. This unwavering dedication embodies the Stoic spirit of remaining committed to one's goals and principles despite external pressures. Additionally, Harris exhibits composure and calmness in the face of challenges, a key quality valued in Stoic philosophy. During debates and hearings, she maintains a poised demeanor, clearly conveying her stance even amid strong opposition. So this sense of calm allows Harris to retain her public image and instill confidence in her leadership. Stoicism emphasizes emotional control and rational conduct traits Harris has consistently demonstrated throughout her political career. Moreover, one of Harris's distinctive qualities is her long-term vision and adaptability in policy strategy. When discussing plans for healthcare reform and educational advancement, she focuses on long-term benefits for the community. This forward-thinking approach shows that Harris is not only concerned with short-term objectives, but also with sustainable development, a Stoic virtue aimed at fostering lasting societal benefit. Her flexibility and approach also reflects the Stoic ideal of adapting to circumstances, demonstrating her readiness to face change effectively. Lastly, Harris consistently shows courage in facing adversity, another essential Stoic quality. As one of the first women of color to hold influential positions in government, she has had to overcome numerous barriers and biases. Her perseverance in pursuing a political path, despite cultural and societal challenges, demonstrates her resilience and bravery. If elected president, she could bring a compassionate and resilient leadership approach focused on inclusivity and perseverance in the face of difficulties, qualities aligned with Stoicism. In conclusion, through her steadfastness, composure, long-term vision, and courage, Kamala Harris embodies many values akin to Stoic philosophy. These traits inspire hope that, should she become president, she would be equipped to confront and address major challenges while upholding principles of justice and unity for the nation. Reflecting on the Stoic values of Marcus Aurelius, especially as the U.S. election nears its conclusion, underscores the importance of choosing a leader who embodies qualities like honesty, restraint, altruism, and a commitment to the common good. In an increasingly complex and challenging world facing issues from national security and climate change to economic stability, a leader with these virtues would prioritize not just short-term gains or personal interests, but also hold a deep sense of responsibility to the people and the global community. At a time when the U.S. grapples with social divisions and political unrest, values like honesty and empathy are crucial to restoring public trust in government. A Stoic leader would act sincerely, grounded in principle, and willing to consider a diversity of voices rather than being focused on personal power. Additionally, restraint in wielding authority and emotional control are essential qualities for maintaining stability and avoiding impulsive actions that could harm the greater good. Electing a president is more than choosing an individual, it's selecting a vision and direction for the nation. As the election reaches its final phase, one can hope that Americans will carefully weigh the candidate's character and sense of responsibility to make the wisest decision. By approaching this choice with a Stoic mindset, voters can select a leader who not only excels politically, but also has the heart and vision to guide the U.S. toward unity and sustainable progress. This is a pivotal moment to choose a president who can rise above personal interests, uphold the nation's and the world's best interests, and potentially become one of the most remarkable leaders in history.